John had spent most of his life in the quiet isolation of the mountains. He was a cowboy, a simple man with a humble ranch and a steady routine. His days were spent working with his cattle, fixing fences and caring for the land. His only companions were the animals and the vast open skies. Though he had some friends who lived in the nearby town, he preferred the solitude of the mountains. It gave him peace, and that peace was something he cherished deeply. Yet even though he was used to being alone, a part of him felt the sting of loneliness. For years, John had longed for a companion, someone to share the long days and cold nights. He had hoped for love, but it had always seemed just out of reach. The few relationships he had tried never lasted. His hopes were often dashed, and he came to believe that maybe, just maybe, he was meant to be alone. On one of his rides through the wilderness, John was making his way back to the ranch after a long day of checking his cattle. The sun was beginning to set, casting a warm golden glow over the land. The air was cool and crisp, and everything seemed peaceful. He loved these moments when the world seemed to slow down and the only sounds were the wind in the trees and the soft clip-clop of his horse's hooves. As he rode along, John noticed something strange in the distance. A small figure on the side of the trail caught his eye. At first he thought it was just a trick of the light, but as he got closer he saw that it was a woman, a young woman, sitting on the ground, her clothes ragged and covered in dust. His heart raced as he approached her. Something about the way she sat there, alone, weary, and vulnerable, made him stop. He wasn't used to seeing anyone out here, especially not a woman. As he dismounted and walked toward her, he could see that she was in pain. Her face was streaked with dirt and tears, and her body seemed limp, as if she had been walking for days without rest. "Ma'am, are you all right?" John asked, his voice soft but firm. He wasn't sure if she would respond, but he felt an overwhelming urge to help her. The woman looked up at him, her eyes wide with shock and fear. She tried to speak, but only a weak whisper came out. I don't know where to go," she managed to say. "They left me." John frowned, kneeling beside her. "Who left you, miss?" "They did," she replied, her voice trembling. "The men who were supposed to care for me. They said I was no good, that I couldn't give them what they wanted." Her words were jumbled, and she seemed to struggle to keep them together. "I couldn't give them children," she added, her voice barely audible. John's heart sank as he realized what had happened. He knew that in this harsh world, people often treated others with cruelty, especially women who couldn't meet certain expectations. But to abandon someone like this in the middle of nowhere was beyond anything he could understand. He had heard of similar stories, women left behind, discarded as if they were no more than burdens. It was a cold, unforgiving world for people like her. "Where are you from?" John asked, his mind racing. "What happened? Tell me your story." The woman hesitated, her eyes searching the ground. After a moment, she spoke again, her words heavy with sadness. "I was married. I thought I would have a family, but when I couldn't have children, they said I was useless to them. My husband, he didn't want me anymore, and neither did anyone else." She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "They left me here on the road, told me to get out, that I was a waste." John listened, feeling the weight of her pain in every word she spoke. His instincts kicked in. He couldn't leave her like this. There was no way he could abandon someone who had already been abandoned by everyone else. "You're not alone," John said softly. "You're not a waste. You've just had a rough go of things, but I'll help you. Come with me. I have a ranch not far from here. You can rest and we'll figure this out." The woman looked up at him, unsure at first. She seemed to want to trust him, but her fears were still strong. She had been hurt by others before, and trusting another person wasn't something she was ready to do. But there was something in John's voice, something that made her feel safe. After a long pause, she nodded. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice full of gratitude and disbelief. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," John replied gently. "Just come with me. You'll be safe." John helped the woman onto his horse, and together they made their way back to his ranch. As they rode, the wind picked up, and the cool evening air seemed to calm the tension between them. The woman, whose name he learned was Sarah, began to open up more. She told him about her life before all of this, about the dreams she once had of a family and a home. But as the conversation went on, John realized that she had lost more than just a husband. She had lost her sense of self-worth. In Sarah's eyes, John saw the pain of rejection, of being cast aside, and it pained him to know that she had suffered so much. He knew the world could be a cruel place, but he never imagined it could be so heartless to someone like Sarah. As they neared the ranch, John couldn't help but wonder if his life would ever be the same again. He had always been alone, and he had come to accept it. But now, with Sarah beside him, he began to question everything he had believed. Could there be something more to life than solitude? Could he build a new future not just for himself, but for someone else too? When they finally arrived at the ranch, John led Sarah inside. The warmth of the fire in the hearth filled the room, and Sarah's weary face brightened slightly as she took in the simple but cozy surroundings. For the first time in a long while, she felt a glimmer of hope. John offered her a seat by the fire, and without saying much more, he went to the kitchen to prepare something for her to eat. As he worked, he couldn't help but think about how his life had suddenly shifted. What had started as an ordinary day had turned into something entirely unexpected. He had no idea what the future would hold, but he knew one thing for sure. He couldn't let Sarah face the world alone. He had found someone who needed him as much as he needed her. And for the first time in years, John felt like maybe, just maybe, his life could finally have a purpose. As Sarah sat by the fire, her mind raced with 1,000 thoughts. She had no idea what tomorrow would bring, but she knew that she was no longer alone. For the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to feel something she had almost forgotten: hope. The next few weeks on John's ranch were different than anything Sarah had ever experienced. She woke up to the smell of fresh coffee brewing, and each morning she found herself helping John with the daily chores. It wasn't much, just the work of a small ranch, feeding the chickens, tending to the cows, and mending the fences. But to Sarah, it was everything. It gave her a sense of purpose she hadn't felt in years. There was no rush, no pressure, no expectations to meet. It was a simple life, a peaceful life, and for the first time in a long while she began to feel at ease. John, too, noticed a change in her. The weight that had once been on her shoulders seemed to lift little by little. She was a hard worker, quick to learn and eager to help. There was something about her resilience, about the way she tackled every task with quiet determination, that made John admire her even more. She was stronger than she knew, and it became clearer to him each day that her strength was far more than just physical. Sarah had been through a lot, but she was still standing, and that was something he couldn't help but respect. As they spent more time together, the bond between them grew. Their conversations were often quiet but meaningful, sharing stories about their lives and the paths that had led them to this moment. Sarah spoke of the life she had once dreamed of, her hopes of having children and building a family. She told him how she had loved her husband once, how she had given everything for him only to have it all crumble when she couldn't have children. It was hard for her to talk about, but John listened patiently, offering no judgments, just his quiet presence. John shared his own story as well, though he never went into too much detail. He told Sarah that he had always been alone, and though he had tried to find someone to share his life with, it had never worked out. He wasn't one for big words or grand gestures, but Sarah could see the hurt in his eyes whenever he spoke of his past. He wasn't just a cowboy. He was a man who had longed for something more but had never found it. Now, with Sarah by his side, he didn't know what to think. Something was different, but he couldn't yet figure out what it meant. It wasn't long before Sarah started to feel the stirrings of something new in her heart. Every day as they worked side by side, something between them grew, an unspoken connection, a quiet understanding. There was no rush, no pressure to make anything more of it than what it was. They were two people, both scarred by the world, finding comfort in each other's company. And for Sarah, it felt right. One afternoon, as they sat on the porch, the sun dipping low behind the hills, Sarah finally spoke the words she had been thinking for some time. "John," she began, her voice soft, "I don't know what I would have done without you. You saved me, not just from the road, but from myself. I had lost so much, but you've shown me something I didn't even know I needed." John turned to look at her, his expression unreadable. But inside, he felt a warmth spread through him, a feeling he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years. "You don't have to thank me," he said gruffly, though there was a softness to his words. "I just did what anyone would have done." But Sarah shook her head. "Not everyone would have done what you did. You didn't have to take me in. You didn't have to care." John looked out across the land, his thoughts drifting. He hadn't expected any of this. A few weeks ago, he had been alone, content in his solitude. Now he wasn't so sure. Sarah had become more than just someone he helped. She had become someone he cared about, deeply, quietly, and without question. He wasn't ready to admit it to himself, let alone her, but it was true. As the days went on, their relationship grew in ways neither of them fully understood. They spent evenings talking, sitting by the fire, and enjoying each other's company. It wasn't love, not yet, but it was something. It was the foundation of something real, something that could eventually grow into something deeper. But even as things between them began to shift, Sarah carried the weight of her past with her. She still struggled with the idea that she wasn't enough. Every now and then she would pull away, retreating into herself, feeling the sharp sting of rejection that she had carried for so long. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was broken, that she wasn't whole because she couldn't give John what he might want in the future. Children. John could see it in her eyes when she withdrew, and it hurt him to see her like that. He wanted to tell her that it didn't matter, that she was enough just as she was. But he wasn't sure how to say it. He wasn't good with words, especially when it came to matters of the heart. He wished he could show her, though. Show her how much she meant to him, how much he valued her. But instead, he found himself remaining silent, unsure of what to do. One evening, as they sat together on the porch, Sarah's voice broke the silence. "John," she said quietly, "I know what you're probably thinking. You might want children one day, and I can't give you that. I can't give you what you deserve." John turned to her, his brow furrowed. "Sarah, look at me." He waited until her eyes met his. "You don't need to worry about that, not now. Not ever. But it matters," she whispered. "I know it does. I know what men want. I know what's expected." John reached out and gently took her hand, a soft smile playing on his lips. "You're wrong, Sarah. It doesn't matter. What matters is who you are, not what you can give or what you can't." The words seemed to sink into Sarah's heart, and for the first time in a long time, she let go of the guilt she had carried. She allowed herself to believe him, to believe that she was enough. The quiet love and care that John had shown her began to heal the wounds she had thought would never fade. Slowly, she began to see herself in a new light, no longer defined by what others had expected of her, but by her own worth. And so, as the days turned into weeks, John and Sarah continued their life together. It wasn't perfect, and they still had their struggles, but they faced them together. They were two broken souls finding healing in each other, and that was enough. For now, that was more than enough.